Genesis chapter 7, verse number 1. We did this whole Bible study last night, only to discover the microphone button was not pushed. It was on mute. So we're going to do it again. Now, according to evolution, things get better automatically, you know. How many things have to be right? You guys are engineers. How many things have to be right to make a microphone work? A whole lot of things, right? All the circuitry in the receiving unit or whatever. How many things can go wrong to make it stop working? Any one of many thousands of things, like clipping the wire or, you know. Anybody believes they came from a rock and it all happened by chance needs some real serious help. And we, this way. We are here to help. I'm going to get this thing right. Close enough. Okay. Close enough. So let's pray. Lord, teach us from your word now. Show us something that'll draw us closer to you. Help us to understand, Lord, your word and to apply it to our lives. In Jesus' name, amen. In 2 Peter chapter 3, it said, the scoffers in the last days would be ignorant of the creation, the flood, and the coming judgment. What did that flood do to the world? This is where they're willingly ignorant of that flood. This is a critical event, and most Christians don't even understand the importance of that flood in Noah's day to explain the world today. So the Lord said to Noah, come thou and all thy house into the ark. Again, he said, come, not go. Most other versions say, go into the ark. No. Come, Noah, I'm going with you. And if you're going through a trial or a test or a flood, God will go with you. He said, come on, let's go through this together. He was with them in the fiery furnace. Remember, the king looked in and said, hey, didn't we throw 3 guys in there? I see 4. And the 4th one is like the Son of God, capital S, capital G in the King James Bible. All the New Bible perversions changed it to a son of the gods. Get a King James. Anyway, come thou in the house into the ark, for I have seen thee righteous before me in this generation. Boy, does God look down and see you righteous? What does God see when he sees you? I think about that often for me. God, what do you, Lord, are you happy? Are you pleased? I don't care if the world's pleased or not. It doesn't matter to me at all. Is God pleased? That's what I want to know. Every clean beast shalt thou take to thee by 7s. Now, it does not tell us how Noah would know which ones were clean. Later in the book of Exodus, 1,000 years after the flood, God defined in Exodus, Leviticus, Numbers, which ones are clean, which ones are not clean. Apparently that was something that was always known to mankind, and it was finally just codified or put into law in the time of Moses. That's all I can figure out. I don't know. But the male and his female of beasts that are not clean by 2, the male and his female. Of fowls of the air by 7s, the male and the female, to keep seed alive upon the face of the earth. The purpose of all of this is to keep seed alive. You know, one seed, these, where'd that thing go here? I had the bottle of apricot seeds here somewhere. Somebody texted us today and said, can you grab that for me if you can see it? I can't see it. And said, oh, Hovind, you're still going to promote apricot seeds? Some guy ate some and died. Oh, yeah, thank you, sir. Okay. Yep, I'm going to, on nationwide, worldwide web, eat a cyanide-containing apricot seed. Watch this. 2 of them. They taste really bad. Making some water. Yes, I believe cyanide is just like they say it contains cyanide and benzaldehyde. They're poisons, you know. This contains hydrogen and oxygen. Explosive gases. You mix them together and you put it on fire. It's called water. Okay. So the cyanide on the apricot seeds is fine. Okay. Fowls of the air by 7s that keep seed alive. That's the purpose of all this. For yet 7 days, and I will cause it to rain upon the earth 40 days and 40 nights. Now, the rain was 40 days and 40 nights. But we'll see at the end of this chapter, the water kept coming up for 150 days. It's not all coming from rain. Matter of fact, probably very little of it is. Every living substance that I have made will I destroy from off the face of the earth. And Noah did, according to all that the Lord commanded him. Well, that's a rare thing these days. And Noah was 600 years old when the flood of waters was upon the earth. And Noah went in, and his sons and his wife and his sons' wives with him to the ark because of the flood of waters of clean beasts. Anyway, everybody got on board. Everything that creepeth upon the earth. The fish didn't go on the ark. They had plenty of water outside. Everything on the earth. It spells it out clearly 3 times in this chapter. Things on the earth in whose nostrils is the breath of life. Okay, we'll see that in a minute. There went in 2 and 2 unto Noah into the ark, the male and the female, as God had commanded Noah. And it came to pass after 7 days that the waters of the flood were upon the earth. So Noah got in, got settled, and 7 days later the water was coming up. In the 600th year of Noah's life, the 2nd month, the 17th day of the month, the same day were all the fountains of the great deep broken up. Now here's where the flood water came from. It came from inside the earth. The fountains of the deep were broken up, and then the windows of heaven were open. The rain was upon the earth 40 days. Self same day entered Noah, Shem, Ham, Japheth, and all the girls into the ark. Okay. In Psalm 24 it tells us, the earth is the Lord's, the fullness thereof, the world and they that dwell therein. He founded it upon the seas and established it upon the floods. God built the earth on top of the water. Today, most of the water is on top of the earth. When he first made it, the water was in the crust of the earth. It says so 3 times. Psalm 33. He gathered the waters of the sea together as a heap. He layeth up the depth in storehouses. The depth or the deep is always a reference to the water, the oceans. It was stored in the earth before. Psalm 136. He stretched out the earth above the waters. On my DVD number 2 about the Garden of Eden, what was it like? I cover more on this topic. There was a layer of water above, probably a canopy of ice 2 or 3 inches thick, maybe 10 miles up. Layer of air to breathe, probably 10 or 15 miles. Dirt and rocks to stand on, the crust of the earth, maybe 10 miles thick, just guessing. And then water in the crust of the earth. That's the water that came shooting to the surface. Now, when it went up, the crust would sink down. Obviously, they're trading places. Walt Brown's book is right here. It is fabulous. In the beginning, what is it, 35 bucks or something? I think about the incredible book. He's done this 8 editions. I got some of the previous ones over there from the early days when he did it. He keeps adding to it, like my seminar, it gets longer and longer. So, but he's got a whole section in here on the flood of Noah and the the physics behind it. He was a physics professor at the Air Force Academy for years in Colorado Springs. Genius. He's wrong about, he doesn't believe there was a canopy overhead. He doesn't use the King James, but other than that, it's really good. I'll work on him on that. But he says, and he's right, there was water under the crust of the earth, in the crust. Probably the crust could have been held up by pillars or just simply on water pressure. You can't squeeze water. You can't compress it. So, the fountains of the deep were broken up and the windows of heaven were open. I think the earth cracked up like an eggshell and the water went shooting out at incredible velocity. The water would go shooting out along these cracks. Now, a cubic foot of rock weighs about 160 pounds, depending on what kind of rock. Some's 180, some's at 185, but roughly 160 per cubic foot of rock. So if you had 10 miles of this stuff stacked up, that'd be 8.5 million pounds of pressure per square foot. That's 58,000 pounds per square inch. Put that in your bike tires and watch what happens. That's 30 tons per square inch. That would have enough pressure to launch stuff into orbit. I think during Noah's flood, when the fountains of the deep broke open, the water went shooting out so fast the sides of those cracks would erode away and it would start blasting rocks into space. All you got to do is get up to 25,000 miles an hour. It's called escape velocity. And as you get further away from the Earth, the escape velocity is less because inverse square law for gravity. Who cares? But the outer space is still full of junk. And we run into it all the time. It's called meteor showers. We smack into stuff like bugs on a windshield. We're still smacking into some of the stuff that got launched off during Noah's flood, I believe, 400 years ago. The moon has craters on it, obviously, but it's interesting. The craters on the near side are much larger than the craters on the back side. Well, Hovind theory, it probably got blasted head on during the flood, got hit by stuff shooting off the earth. Other stuff coming back because of the moon's gravity, stuff that missed it would come back and hit it on the backside would be the smaller stuff. Oh, that really tastes bad. Yeah. Anyway, I've eaten a bunch of them and haven't died yet. There are craters all over the earth. The earth has some big craters. Now, we don't see them as much here because we have wind and water to erode them in, and we fill them in. And the air around the earth burns most of them up on the way in. We're protected by the atmosphere, so when they hit the atmosphere, they catch fire, they burn, and they see a streak across the sky. The moon doesn't have that. It's just going to go smack right into the moon. So I paid my 12 bucks when I was going across Arizona in Winslow, Arizona, to pay the 12 bucks to go see the Barringer meteor crater. You can read all about that if you'd like. So they're much bigger ones. There's one in Quebec, Canada, 47 miles across. You would not want to be anywhere close when that thing hit, whatever it was. There have been 2 people hit by meteors. There was a lady in bed. Meteor came crashing through her ceiling, hit her on the hip. So a picture of her hip, all black and blue, about this big bruise, you know, laying down the street. I think it was the same town, if I remember it. Years ago, I read the story. Somebody heard a crash, and he looked out, and a meteor had gone through the trunk of his car. Another family had one. They're sitting at breakfast. Meteor, a small one, softball size, came in, crashed through their ceiling, hit the floor, bounced up, hit the ceiling, bounced down, hit the floor, hit the ceiling, hit the floor, rolled in, and set the living room carpet on fire. After they've gone through, 50 miles of air, they're pretty hot. The friction makes them like really hot, like melting point of steel. So as this water came shooting out from the crust of the earth, several things are going to happen. The water, as it goes out and shoots up, the continents are going to, the middle part's going to bulge up in the center, called the basalt, the layer of rock underneath. The basalt will bulge up, causing the continents to slide away, as long as there's still water lubricating them, until the water, is dissipated from the source there. So this is from Walt Brown's book here, as the basalt lifts up, it's going to crack, and the water rushes into the crack and cools it off. And today we call it the Mid-Atlantic Ridge, and they measure the magnetic intensity along the Mid-Atlantic Ridge and find that some places are stronger than others. And they think they're measuring magnetic reversals. No, they're not. They're measuring stronger and weaker magnetism, but no magnetic reversals. Watch video number 6 for more on that. But as the continents would slide away, they would eventually wrinkle up. And the wrinkled mountains that are found in several spots around the world, to me, are obvious evidence of lateral compression. Lateral from sideways, lateral pass, latissimus dorsi. Lateral compression. The whole crust was sliding sideways and smashed into resistance and wrinkled up. I think you're not going to understand the geology of the world until you believe in a flood. It's the only way to explain it. The earth got cracked up at the time of Noah's flood. All over the world there are still fault lines. There's the Hayward Fault, the New Madrid Fault, the San Andreas Fault. None of them are my fault, but there's no question there are fault lines. I was just on the San Andreas a few weeks ago. Drove across the stop and took some pictures. It's amazing. It's a clear crack right across California. As the continents would sink in from the water leaving underneath, that would do a couple interesting things. It would trap some water underneath, and we still have water trapped in the crust of the earth, but also the crust being heavier than the water, it would sink as they change places. That's going to speed the earth up in its spin. Just like an ice skater, when they pull their arms in, they spin faster, stick their arms out, they slow down, or a diver, when you flip. I think the earth used to have 360 days per year. It would turn 360 times while it went around the sun, and then it sped up because of the flood. And today it's 365.2422. And who cares? That's why you have a leap year every 4 years, but you don't have one on the century mark. And even then it's not right. It gets off eventually. They got to do something every 400 years. I think, is it 400 years they do add the leap year? Something like that. So who cares? Okay. When they went down to the bottom of the ocean in 1977, they found hot water vents shooting up into the bottom of the ocean. Tens of millions of them. Well, now, guys, if there's hot water shooting up into the bottom of the ocean, where does it have to be coming from? Down lower than that, right? There's still water, pockets of water, really hot water, trapped in the crust of the earth. The earth is busted up, and sometimes these plates move. And when they move, it creates problems. They can slide sideways, they can lift up, they can drop down. It can really rearrange the real estate in a hurry when you have earthquakes or landslides or volcanoes. How'd you like to be the railroad engineer on that one? Hey, boss, we got a problem here on track 7. What do? You cut it out and just lay new track in, This, you can just Google fault lines and see thousands of pictures where the earth has cracked and done incredible damage. This guy's swimming pool is still draining down in there. How'd you like to have that in your backyard? What would you do? You punish the kids by making them play in the backyard. Right? You know, the Bible a couple times says the earth opened up and swallowed people. Yeah, that can really happen. This farmer, part of his field shifted over 5 feet. Obviously, he didn't plow it that way. Okay? Cracks all over the world are still happening. There are still earthquakes going on, and I think this is all remnant movement from Noah's flood. Just Google fault lines, and you'll get a bunch of pictures. How'd you like to be on the highway department? The boss says to the engineers, guys, go fix that. Boss, where do you start to fix something like that? Reroute the highway, dig it someplace else, I guess, you know. This one, half of the village fell off and a mudslide came down. How about that one? What would you tell your insurance company? My car fell in the highway. Yeah, okay. Let me see now. Your car fell into the highway. Right, okay. And what were you drinking that night? Okay. No, it's really true. Here's more pictures of earthquake damage or landslide damage or fault line movements. Sometimes just half the ground drops away. Here the highway shifted over. Did you see the one, was it Orlando, Florida, where the neighborhood fell in and several people fell down there? They just said, don't even go near it. Don't get them. They're gone. Swallowed them up. Sinkholes. Probably still from Noah's flood. Sometimes earthquakes take place really down deep in the earth. And they can tell how deep it is by the S&P waves and all this stuff. There's a lot of science behind seismograph machines. But it doesn't prove this movement's been going on for millions of years. What they'll do, they'll look at how far the continents are moving. And they'll say, okay, they're moving a quarter inch a year. And from Europe to America is, 3,000 miles. So 3,000 divided by, a quarter inch per year. Say it took millions a year. No. What if most of the movement was rapid at the beginning? Could have been. And it's slowed down now to a quarter inch a year. So anyway, the atheist website was that one. They said about how stupid Hovind is. There's a bunch of them. People have been sending me all kinds of links to this. Tell them I'll do a live debate with them anytime. Come on, guys. What's that noise the chicken makes? He said, Hovind, you're so stupid. He said, continental, because I mentioned the continents are connected. Someone says, do you think the continents were ever connected? I say, they're still connected right now. Just the low places are full of water. Are the opposite sides of our lake out here connected? Yeah. If you go out to any of we got 10 lakes on the property. All of them have a bottom. All of them. I haven't checked every square inch of all of them, but I'd be willing to bet they do. You can go check it if you'd like. The oceans have a bottom. Yes. And he said, well, Hovind, you're so stupid. Continental crust is lighter than oceanic crust. Okay, well, if it's pink and green, it doesn't matter. They're still connected, you moron. Still, gee whiz. Anyway, don't get me started on it. Yes, they're connected. Okay, so the Bible says the world that then was being overflowed with water perished. What does that mean? Well, the world before the flood. Before the flood, they lived to be 900. Read Genesis chapter 5. After the flood, it dropped off to 400, then 200, then 100. Something changed. The world that then was perished. That's the world of mostly land instead of mostly water, loaded with plants and animals. But there's so much coal in the ground right now. If you took every tree and bush and blade of grass on the whole planet and squeezed it and turned it to coal, you could not make all the coal in the ground. There's a lot of coal in the ground. Well, the atheists will say, see, that proves it took millions of years. No, that proves the earth was different before the flood came. That flood buried that world that was loaded with gigantic trees. I was up in Alaska watching the Porter Glacier. You take a cruise for $12 and you go out and you watch the glacier break off icebergs, okay? So we're watching the Porter Glacier in Alaska. And I got talking to the guy on the ship. I said, what do you do for a living? He said, I drill for oil in the North Slope of Alaska, way up here. And the earth is round and it does turn. Okay. He said, I'm up here in the North Slope of Alaska. I said, when you're drilling, do you find anything unusual? He said, yeah. He said, just a few months ago, we were drilling a hole. We went down 1,000 feet through permafrost, permanently frozen ground. And we always, whatever we drill out, we save it on the ground beside us because we want to see what formation we're going through. We lay it out in a big, long string beside us to know what we're going through. He said, we started hitting a tree. We just happened to hit, and we drilled straight through the top of the tree. We drilled down 300 feet. there was a tree standing up 300 feet tall under 1,000 feet of permafrost. How do you explain that? First place, on the north slope of Alaska, there are no trees at all. Well, there's one tree in Barrow, Alaska, at a Chinese restaurant. It's about this big around and 4 feet tall. They got to put floodlights on it all winter to keep the dumb thing alive. And they're real proud of it. When I went up there, they said, hey, do you want to go see our tree? What? We got a tree up here. You got a tree? Yeah, it's at the Chinese restaurant. I'm serious. Okay. Nothing growing up there. Okay. And here's one 300 feet tall, under 1,000 feet of permafrost. I think the world that then was perished. There used to be 300-foot tall trees at the North Pole and South Pole. Anyway, and they and every beast after his kind, and the cattle after their kind, and the creeping thing after his kind, and the fowl after his kind, two of every sort. 10 times in this chapter it talks about the animals going after their kind, after their sort. They went in, Noah went into the ark, and the Lord shut him in. Boy, when God shuts the door, it ain't gonna leak.